Catherine, I think your point is well made. I do, however, think it's entirely within that regular citizen's purview to call the city and find that out. I don't think it needs to be included in our survey. It's not really pertinent information.
Randy, do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, I'm not necessarily saying anything needs to be changed there, but this is making me kind of think that or it may be denied. I remember you explaining that it's kind of unusual for it to be denied. I don't know if that's what you were going towards, but it kind of takes something quite unusual to present itself for the Board of Adjustment to deny it. It's not a common occurrence. So I don't know if, or it may be denied if blah. I don't know if there's something that could be said that just kind of gets the idea across that that's not an easy thing for the Board of Adjustment to do just because they think this is not a good fit. That can't be a reason for denial.
So then the suggestion would be if there are adverse conditions by the use, it cannot be mitigated by conditions of approval.
I think that provides a little more of that background educational, that it's not just up to the whim of the Board of Adjustment, but there has to be some proven unmitigable adverse impacts in order for it to be denied.
Mm-hmm. That's where I was going.
Jim?
Well, when we're talking about whether or not anything's ever been denied, I think we've sort of denied the last one that was presented to us when it came to us and we remanded it back to the Board of Adjustment. That's sort of a denial of, and it had to be redone by the Board of Adjustment before the conditions were met. So I'm not sure that they've never been denied, or that we just like rubber stamp them because that's not really occurred. But I understand Catherine's point. I also think that each one of these permit applications has to stand on its own merit, and you can't look at a group of them and say this has happened or this hasn't happened. It has to be, they could have all been well presented and certainly within the parameters needed to pass. So I don't know that that's a factor that we want to present in terms of a survey.
And actually, the Board of Adjustment does that very thing, Jim. They look at each thing as an individual item on its own merits.
So what do you think about just adding, or it may be denied if it is determined that it creates an adverse impact that is unmitigable? Are people opposed to that being a part of the?
Yeah, well, at least that says that it can be denied, or it's, if there are unmitigable circumstances that it could be denied. It's not a slam dunk that if you bring a conditional use permit that we're going to rubber stamp it and allow it.
Or maybe halfway in that paragraph, there's a sentence that starts with the conditional use permit process includes. If that becomes its own standalone statement, it separates itself from what's happened in the central business district. And that goes to what you were saying, Bill, that we're just trying to have everybody understand the CUP process.
Well, the last sentence in the whole paragraph does say, or it may be denied. Mm-hmm. I think for any number of reasons, I think it's pretty well covered as written. And as Gary has pointed out, the more we wade into trying to explain ourselves and get into it, the worse it's going to be for getting a good, statistically valid, unbiased set of responses. Perhaps the unmitigable part could be part of it, but then people are going to go off down that road. What the heck is unmitigable supposed to mean? And so the more of this P&Z legalistic jargon we put into it, the more muddied we're going to make it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason I think it's worth considering is that it does, for someone who isn't familiar with the process, it lets them know that there has to be a significant reason to deny it.
Yeah,
I think just denied is sufficient, and we start saying for reasons, and then people are wondering, well, what are these reasons? What's unmitigable supposed to mean? And I think we're just digging ourselves a deeper hole that's going to bias the responses we're going to get. Because how, when you first set foot in this, for example, did you know what mitigable and unmitigable is supposed to mean? I never did before I waded into planning and zoning. And it's gets more legalistic the further you proceed into it. And I'd assume just avoid it and just say the fact that it can be denied should be sufficient.
Barry?
Yeah, there's a little bit of an art to doing surveys. It's not like, do you like chocolate or don't you like chocolate? I mean, it is, well, I kind of like chocolate, or maybe I don't like chocolate that much, so on and so forth. It's when you start weighing in with definitions, you have to be very careful that you don't suggest an answer you're looking for. So whether it's weighted one way, weighted the other way, or you intend it to be neutral, you stay away from those power words or words people can't understand. So we try to make it as basic as possible. Like I said, when we collapse those two questions into one question, the purpose was to make sure that the results of the question were going to be such that we got a yes or no answer or something in between. We didn't get a all yes and all no on two opposite questions that leaves us right back where we started. So again, I don't think you're going to find a perfect question. When you start putting history into it, it makes it even more inexact.
Gary, you, look at, I think keeping things basic is a smart thing to do. Look at, we live in a smart community. We got lots of very, very bright people here that I don't think they need to be guided into something necessarily, and I think by making stuff too cumbersome, it's just asking for more problems down the road.
Well, then here's another
And the
idea.
more words you put into something, the more you're going to have somebody challenge that
Yeah.
to some type of a degree. So I think the basic portion of it is a smart way of going.
I'm not going to add any words, but I'm going to just make a suggestion then that with the background, take out the sentence and that comma after the zoning board of adjustment needs to leave. But the conditional use permit, take that couple sentences and put it before question 1. Because the background is the background. You're telling what's going on. And then these people are about to answer this question. So then here's the process. And then that's when you get to say the conditional use permit process. You take that and put that before question 1.
All right, I don't understand that.
So, if I may.
Please.
If I can
Please.
paraphrase. I think what Catherine is saying is your whole background, including New St. Andrews and everything else, all of that, you would just take that last half of the paragraph on the paragraph entitled background, put it just before question 1 so that you have your entire history, your entire background, then you have what a conditional use permit is, and then you answer the question. Something like that I think would be fine. I mean, you're just not adding any information, you're just moving it around.
Clarifying.
Bill, do you see any issue with that?
It's just a preference, I guess.
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, where you have the background you're going to get into, where you're discussing conditional use permits have been issued, having an explanatory statement in advance of that was helpful for the reader to understand what the conditional use permit is.
What would you think of adding the half paragraph at the beginning?
Sure.
So you had background, explain the conditional use permit process, and then go into the historical perspective?
Sure.
Bill, what do you
I just
think
think
about
it
that?
needs to be delineated out. You said you wanted people to understand the whole process, not specific to educational institutions. So in that case, then you would take out what a conditional use permit is and put it someplace else.
Okay.
That's just my suggestion. I don't write surveys for a living.
So what do you think about it going first? That being the first part, the background starts by what a conditional use permit is, and then it talks about the central business district, says what's happened, and then goes into the survey.
Yeah, that might be the place for it.
What do you think about that, Bill? Belknap?
Sorry.
Hey, we're putting you on the spot, Bill. We want to.
If you wouldn't mind
You did a
repeating
really
that,
good
please.
job with all this, so, I mean,
Yeah,
I know you've thought about
I'm
it a
just
lot.
strictly just trying to think about what the, it's exactly what Art said. And I agree with what he said. You know, it gets too cumbersome with language and then you lose them. So if I'm skimming, like a regular citizen might do, myself included, through the background of, all these things happened. Okay, so what's a conditional use permit? And then I go, because I got to know what that is because that's what I got to answer about.
You know, something you gotta consider too, is that if you make anything too cumbersome and somebody's reading it, they say, you know, I really don't understand, I'm gonna throw it away, I'm not gonna do it. And that's the worst thing you can have, because you really wanna get the feedback of what people think. So you know, that's how I,
Yeah, if you don't get enough people reply, then it's
Yeah.
not statistically
Yeah.
significant
We're
as a
not
survey.
adding anything, it's just an idea for rearrangement.
What about if we make it headed by something called the process or the CUP process rather than, because we've got introduction and background and then all of a sudden we've got a paragraph about the CUP process with no heading. So if we just put a heading and take that, like Catherine's saying, just title it. So it is in some degree of line with the rest of them.
the problem with doing that is, as soon as you do that, then you've got the part of a definition of what a CUP is and not the whole story on it, and that could be confusing as well. Because it seems, look, I'm not a legal guy, but it seems to me from a legal standpoint, you're given just parts of things. Now, that's one of the things I ran into when I was on not only P&Z Board of Adjustment as well as the first time I was on council, because say something, somebody said, well, that's not, you'd have something, I'd say, well, that's not what this said, and then the city attorney would say, oh, but this is what we really mean. Well, that's not what it says. And so you can get something that's not completely done, trying to make a brief explanation, and sometimes that's problematic as well.
So we're
Well,
comfortable with the words, right? Everybody is comfortable with the conditional use permit explained as it is,
Yes.
right? And it's on there. If we don't want to pull it out or title it differently, why don't we just leave it like it is?
Well, it seems to me too, is like the people are going to be looking at the questions and won't give her a rip
I
about
would
some of
skip
this.
all that other stuff and go to the
I mean, no, I'm serious.
I
Well,
agree.
some people will, but some people want to really understand what they're responding to, and they will read it, and they will ask questions, and they will want to understand it before they answer
Awesome.
those, so.
I don't know, well, of course, I've got a background, but I could answer these questions and not worry about what the CUP process says. Of course, I know what it is.
Yeah.
So that's,
But the reason I'm speaking on this is because 2 years ago, when we did that first question that was talking about the conditional use process, you've done a very nice job of getting that encapsulated in this very short form. So I would just like to strengthen it by either doing as Gina suggested, saying the process, so that you understand the conditional use process, or just putting it at the beginning of the question, or giving it its own beginning paragraph. It's something maybe you can work on, and I don't,
What about underlining the words, "the conditional use process"?
Well, I mean, I think we could probably take a look at getting it another heading or break out that as a separate paragraph. I mean, the intent was, background just talks about the intent of the central business district. Then continues to say, in 2005, the city council changed the zoning code to allow them as a condition, with a conditional use permit. And then it just goes on to say the conditional use permit process includes a public hearing and allows the zoning board adjustment like a problem. So the concern is that it doesn't say that it could be denied. I guess I'm still trying to understand the flow, because it just kind of, it encapsulates the intent of the central business district, the change to the code the council
see,
made.
and then it goes into
And it
the
introduces,
story.
if I may, it introduces the term conditional use permit, and then the next sentence defines what the conditional use permit is and the process. So I'm still just trying to understand what is, because they started off with a concern that they hadn't been denied, or wanting to include some background that said no conditional use permit for an education institution had ever been denied.
Right, and you all said that hadn't, so that's irrelevant. So then, I'm just trying to make sure that the conditional use permit process is separate from the background of these conditional uses that have been allowed.